Words of Sri Aurobindo from the book Letters on Yoga from the collective works of Sri Aurobindo, volume 28, page 16, topic Sachidananda. Here Sri Aurobindo says, when Yajnavalkya says there is no consciousness in the Brahman state, he is speaking of consciousness as the human being knows it. The Brahman state is that of a supreme existence, supremely aware of itself, Swayam Prakasha. It is Sachidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. Even if it be spoken of as beyond that, Parat Param, it does not mean that it is a state of non-existence or non-consciousness, but beyond even the highest spiritual substratum, that is, the foundation above in the luminous paradox of the Rig Veda of cosmic existence and consciousness. As it is evident from the description of Chinese Tao and the Buddhist Sunya that is a nothingness in which all is, so with the negation of consciousness here. Superconscient and subconscient are only relative terms. As we rise into the superconscient, we see that it is a consciousness greater than the highest we yet have, and therefore in our normal state, inaccessible to us. And if we can go down into the subconscient, we find there a consciousness other than our own at its lowest mental state, and therefore ordinarily inaccessible to us. The inconscient itself is only an involved state of consciousness which, like the Tao or the Shunya, though in a different way, contains all things suppressed within it, so that under a pressure from above or within, all can evolve out of it, an inert soul with a somnambulist force. Sri Aurobindo says the gradations of consciousness are universal states, not dependent on the outlook of the subjective personality. Rather, the outlook of the subjective personality is determined by the grade of consciousness in which it is organized according to the typical nature or its evolutionary stage. Sri Aurobindo says it will be evident that by consciousness is meant something which is essentially the same throughout but variable in status, condition, operation, in which in some grades or conditions the activities we call consciousness can exist either in a suppressed or an unorganized or a differently organized state, while in other states some other activities may manifest which in us are suppressed, unorganized or latent, or else unless perfectly manifested, less intensive, extended and powerful than in those higher grades above our highest mental limit. Sri Aurobindo says if your definition is correct, consciousness cannot be a self-existent reality. It is a result, a phenomenon depending on reactions of something. You say a personality, but what is a personality apart from consciousness to the universal forces of nature? We can take a purely external view and say that consciousness is the result of a mass of reactions to the impact of outward physical things on the brain and nerves of a physical being. In this case, consciousness is a sort of effective hallucination. There is no real permanent consciousness, but only a subjective impression created by a constant activity of reactions. As a number of dancing fires may create a glow in the sky, so consciousness is created by these reactions and is suspended or disappear when they halt or cease. In your definition, you add a question mark, a real subjective personality, and supplement the reactions of the physical outward things by reactions of inner things or things from above or below. But still, the consciousness is only a seeing or interpretation of reactions. It is a result of them, a phenomenon. If there are no more reactions, consciousness ceases to exist. For what other basis has it or standing place than the impermanent reaction to forces? Sri Aurobindo says, unless it is something intrinsic and inherent in the subjective personality. But then it is not a result of the reactions or a seeing and interpretation of them, but rather the reactions are the result of a pre existent consciousness, and the seeing or interpretation is merely an activity, perhaps only a very partial surface activity of the consciousness already and always inherent in the personality. Sri Aurobindo says, even if there were no impact of forces or no reactions, the consciousness would still be there, but static and inactive. But again, this activity of consciousness might not be limited to an interpretation or a passive reaction to forces. It might also, if it chose, be the creator or determinant of its reactions, as for instance to a blow on the body or the vital. It might refuse the natural reactions of pain or anger and remain still and immobile, or it might return an unusual reaction of love or pleasure. Also, this consciousness might not be a recipient or seer of forces, but a creator or putter out of forces. It might not only be a knower, but an energy, a dynamic. In this view, your definition becomes totally inadequate. Further, the word personality is a misleading word because for that we usually know the personality is itself only a formation of consciousness. Behind it, we are aware of a person or a Purusha who puts forward the mutable surface formation we call personality, and who even have many personalities at the same time or different personalities at different times. This Purusha would be then a being, a consciousness, would not be a result or an activity, but a constant reality, an intrinsic power of awareness and action inherent in the being. As the being is self-existent, as the consciousness is self-existent in the being, the Purusha. This is a realization we have of it in yogic experience, eternal reality of consciousness inherent in the eternal reality of existence, as in the concept and experience of Sachidananda. These are the words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo.